Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Hello, and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. We are on episode number 41. And today we have a very special guest with us. It's our absolute pleasure to introduce Natasha Koifman from NKPR.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, David and David.
Welcome, Natasha. We're very excited to have you here. And you were one of the keynote speakers at the Buzz conference last week. And we were hoping to get you on beforehand or even there, but we're really happy to have you on afterwards. So maybe before we get into your whole history and background, is why would they reach out to you to be a keynote speaker to the Buzz conference? We sort of know the answer, but I think anybody watching or listening this would want to know that answer.
Well, what I had spoken about at the Buzz conference was Natasha the Residences, which is a building that I collaborated on with Lantera Developments. And it's a building downtown Toronto, 47 stories, right on Adelaide Street. So that was, we were talking about humanizing the brand, and Natasha the Residence, which has had so much success. We sold out all the allocations that we put forward within, I think it was the first 4 or 5 weeks. So I guess that was why.
That's awesome. How does it feel to have, your brand humanized out there and used in such a powerful way?
I mean, it was incredible because I had the opportunity to really look at a real estate or development project from the inside out. So we're used to promoting something, once it's materialized a little bit. In this particular case, I had the opportunity to work with Alessandro on, the guts of a building and really look at naming all the units. How are people going to truly use the space and live in the space? Because my office has been on Adelaide Street for almost 20 years, that's where I live, work, and play. And so having this building just a couple blocks away, I had that insight of like, how are people truly going to use this space? And so knowing that we have units that people live in that are around 600 square feet or 700 square feet or even 500 square feet or less, we wanted to make sure that when we're considering their living space, it's not just the 500 square feet that they're living in, but they actually have 20,500 square feet of space that they're living in, because we have 20,000 square feet of amenity space. But then we also wanted to ensure that that amenity space was truly useful for them, and that it wasn't just, let's put in the same old into these amenities that sometimes people use, sometimes they don't. We got really creative with that 20,000 square feet to ensure that it was useful for the person that is living downtown.
So is it targeted for a particular generation, or like for certain types of lifestyles, or are there different amenities targeted for different people in different stages of their life?
I mean, I would say all of that for sure. But we're taking into consideration that we wanted to build a sense of community. And so it wasn't just about living in your apartment. Like I've lived in New York for 20 years. I've always gone back and forth. So I've had my apartment there. I have my home in Toronto. And so I've lived both in a condominium, and I've also lived, in a home. And we wanted to bring the two together. So when you are living in, a building, how do you make sure that you feel that same sense of community as you would if you're feeling in a home? So we created indoor and outdoor space that felt like it was an extension of your unit. We have the whole work life is going to, it's changed after COVID. Even in our office, I've decided we're only going to go back to the office 2 days a week, as opposed to the full 5 days. And I don't think that's going to change for us. It works for the team. It works for me. The only thing that we'll have to figure out is we're paying, $30,000 a month in rent, so for 8 days a week. So, and I think a lot of businesses are kind of looking at, what is the future of that? So when you think about Natasha the Residences, we have a work area that feels more like a lounge than a real work area. We created a laundrette which is super cool because it's more of a place for people to come and feel that sense of community. So you have a washer and dryer in your suite, but we've also created this laundrette where you can go do your, maybe some of your larger pieces, but you also feel that connection to someone else. So you might have a coffee, you might just chill. So you feel like this is where you live, like really live, as opposed to that's my unit, if that makes any sense.
It's how you interact with the space, right? And I think you've been in Adelaide Street for so long that you really figure out the functionality and truly merge the live and the work aspect, and really figured out, what people want in their everyday lifestyle, to really, get them that sense of community and really get them to really interact with the space that's available to them.
For sure. I mean, we have a social media room. So as an example, I believe that the moment you're on social media, whether you do it for work or not, you're a brand. So even if you're applying for a job and you're not in the digital or marketing space, the first thing employers look at is like, oh, let me look at their social media to see if like you're using good judgment.
Right.
And so we have a social media room where you can use it for, personal reasons, or you can use it for work reasons. We have a pet spa. So just taking all of that into consideration of how people might actually use the space. We have an area for, it's a piano room basically. So as soon as you get off the elevator, there's a baby grand piano that plays on its own. And so there's that vibe. We were trying to capture cool vibe and useful space, but in the most chic way possible. And so it was a really awesome project to work on, because I really felt that between Lantera, Alessandro, and myself, we were able to bring this project to life. And then Montana Steel packaged it all up for us in the perfect way. So
that's a pretty unique type of lifestyle building for Toronto, the Toronto market anyways, but with your travels and living in New York, have you been exposed to similar types of buildings that already exist there?
For sure. I mean, when you think about, I don't know if they're similar per se, but I think where a lot of buildings probably miss out is they're trying to get the building up so quickly that and because the reality is the real estate market is so hot in all the major markets that you're selling to investors. So they're not always thinking about the end user. But the reality is, even if you're selling it to an investor, the end user, whether you're renting it or whether you're, buying as an end user, it's still that person that's living in it. And I just think
has to live there.
That's exactly it. And I just think that developers really do need to be thinking about how is someone going to actually interact and engage with this space. And often buildings go up because they're thinking the investor. But what I love about what Lantera is doing, and I think actually Toronto has some of the best builders in the world, because they do consider, how is this space truly being lived in and being utilized? My apartment in New York is an example. What New Yorkers do quite a bit is they take outdoor space into consideration. So that's, my place always had like great outdoor space that you could utilize, because you just don't get a lot of that. And I find in New York, what happens is it's based on neighborhood. So if you're in Tribeca, there's always like a huge playroom, because usually it's families that are living in the apartments in Tribeca, or on the Upper West Side. So they do it, I feel like, more based on neighborhood than they're actually thinking about, how space will be utilized. They're like, okay, we're going to have families in here, so we're going to do like an enormous play area. So it's a little different. Also, less space. I would say New York, you're dealing with a little bit less space. It's rare that I've seen 20,000 square feet of amenity space in New York City.
Right.
Natasha, that's almost like, I look at Natasha the Residences and I think to myself, what a great PR project, on a residential scale. It's almost like you're taking, all your years of experience and your life experience, and your local neighborhood experience, and packaging up in a package that's, really hard to refuse.
It was incredible. I mean, when Mark approached me, it was January 2020, and Mark has so many really interesting ideas. I think he's one of the most brilliant marketers out there. And he's like, I have a crazy idea. What do you think about, naming a building after you? Let me tell you about this project. And I was stunned at first because I'm like, really? And then it made sense when he was saying, like, you've been in this area for 20 years, you're accomplished, and a lot of people, from what he was saying, really look up to that sense of accomplishment. And how do you sort of bring all of that to life? And we were able to do that with Natasha the Residences, because I'm a big believer in work-life integration. I think you have to love what you do. You live it, you work it. All of my work friends are also my friends. And so there's no separation for me. And so that was one of the things that we really looked at with the building as well, is how do you create that sense of community across the board and bring everything together.
So your background is public relations. Your success has really been in public relations. Your reputation is all built through that. And I heard you're now being asked to get involved in a real estate project. And correct if I'm wrong, but no history of being involved in real estate projects. Like you didn't have a career in real estate before you had a career in PR, did you?
Well, no. So what we've worked with developers in the past. So before I got asked to collaborate on Natasha the Residences, Lantero was a client for about 4 years already at that point, 4 or 5 years. And we work with some of the biggest developers in the city. So I certainly have experience in that space. Where I felt like I learned so much with this project was it was the inside out. We look at, okay, when you look at, a project that's coming to life, you get it once it's almost sort of thought through. With this, we were thinking it through from the very beginning, the very, very early stages. And so it was just a little bit of a different twist. And the talk that I did at Buzz was around the humanizing of a brand. And what made this project successful is that there was actually a person that could consult on how someone would truly live in this space. Because when you look at a lot of the projects out there, you might have a celebrity aligned with it. You might just, name it, based on the number of the street. So how do you actually give the building a heartbeat? And so with this project, that's what we were able to do, because it's based on how someone truly lives their life in this neighborhood. And I think that's why we all had so much fun with this project, because you're able to actually call on the experience of how you live and integrate that into the entire space. I remember there was an iteration of the building that I saw. It was the first draft, the outside of the building. And I remember saying to Mark, I said, you can't do that. I'm claustrophobic. And just looking at this makes me feel claustrophobic. No one's going to want to be in this building. And so we went through a few different iterations of that. So now when you even look at the outside of the building, you have the north side of the building feels almost a bit masculine. And then the south facing side of the building has a bit of a curve and it feels a bit feminine. And so, even that has a story where I feel, being in business for 20 years, I sometimes feel like a man and I sometimes feel like a woman. You're just constantly navigating, that fine line. And so it's been kind of interesting, the masculine and the feminine kind of coming together as well.
I think these days you might need a third side of the building too.
Fair enough.
Absolutely. So Natasha, it's obvious that you have a love of real estate. How does your perspective on PR, play into that?
Well, I think that what we're always looking for when we're doing the storytelling on behalf of our clients and the projects that are out there, and how we consult with our clients, is try and find that storytelling moment. So even if they're looking for, a good example of that is Lifetime. I love what Lifetime has done for themselves when they're building they've created a brand for themselves that is very much grounded in art, supporting up and coming artists, making sure art is integrated into every single project they do. That's, we work really closely with Brian Brown, and it's one of the things that I'm so impressed by with him, because that's fully integrated in everything. And so what we try and do is work with clients to look at what are those pillars that set them apart from perhaps another developer. So when an investor or an end user is buying a building from them or buying a unit from them, they're already sort of associating that builder with the type of product that they're going to get, with the type of experience that they're going to get, with, what are they kind of known for? And so that's what we work with them on, shaping their brand so that as they continue to put more product forward, that there is that storytelling and that there's that consistency in what they're known for. Like I said, Lifetime's known for doing great collaborations. You look at the Lenny Kravitz collaboration that they did with Bisha. You look at the collaboration they did with George Pimentel for the Oscars project. There's always, they did that Mr. Brainwash initiative as well. So there's always an element of that, and you start to expect that. And to me, that is that is an exceptional brand. When you know what to expect from a company, or when you know what to expect from a brand in a positive, way, that's good PR, that's good marketing.
And when it comes to real estate, I mean, there's really no better story to tell, right? Like, I mean, real estate, when you look at real estate and how real estate is integrated into every single fabric of our lives, it's where we make our memories.
Yeah.
It's where our kids are born, right? It's where we do all our storytelling.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you look at Toronto, and what did someone say to me the other day? There's 250 cranes up in Toronto. So certainly that's where we build our memories, but it's also, how do you differentiate yourself? How does one building differentiate themselves from another building that's going up right next door to it? And so I think that's, when you think about marketing and you think about PR, that's important. So we work with our clients to really determine what is the storytelling, what is unique about this building, and let's think about the community and, what will people actually care about that are living here? And let's make sure, we create amenities that actually matter to them. Let's also look at, any collaborations that we could do that would be meaningful potentially. And let's look at supporting our community. And so again, I go back to Lifetime because I just think they do that so well, where they bring in local artists and they're supporting them as well. And so I think that's really important as well. If we're looking at building these amazing towers in our city, let's support our local talent while we're doing it.
How does PR differ from branding? Because in real estate, every single realtor is an entrepreneur, is an independent, practitioner, right? And, we focus on branding a lot in the real estate industry, but I don't think we focus enough on PR.
So PR brings a brand to life, right? So, and I think that also what PR does is we help consult to make sure that the brand is worthy of bringing to life. Like, I'm a big believer in authenticity. So let's not pretend we're something we're not. Let's actually look at, the elements that we have to work with and authentically, create a brand that makes sense. And then let's bring that to life. And so I think that, PR and branding go hand in hand, because if you want really good PR and you're thinking like, I want the end result to be X, then you need to make sure that you're starting at the very beginning to actually make sure you can get there. Because, you can't bring in PR at the very end and say, here's the product. And you're kind of like, but have you considered A, B, C, and D in order to actually get the results you want? And often that's not considered because someone's just creating a really great brand in their mind. But you have to remember, like, people are living there. They're going to be living there. So how do you make sure that that's a place that they want to live? Because ultimately, if an investor is even buying in that condominium, they want to make sure that that condominium has like a lifespan, that 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, people want to live in that building. So you need to be thinking like that. And so that to me is the strength of a brand. And that, that's where PR comes in, right? Like, how do you make that brand strong?
So with your firm, you're involved on both ends of that. You're helping people create the brand in the right way, or if they're partly there to help reshape it or remold it, so that you can then turn around and do the second part, which is the PR part of it, because now you've got a better brand to push.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So just take us back for a second, because I promised at the beginning that we would, just to your history a little bit. And how did you get into the business, and then at what point did you decide I got to do my own thing, create my own company?
Yeah, well, I lived in New York, and when I came back here, and I was a journalist there, and when I came back to Toronto, because I'm originally from here, I remember that was a crossroads for me. I had the opportunity to I remember I had a job offer at the Toronto Sun to be a reporter, and then I also had an opportunity to work for Nick DiDonato at the Liberty Entertainment Group, being his PR manager. And I thought, you know what? In journalism, you're often told what to write. In PR, you're the one that actually gets to create the story. And I really like that. And so I worked there for a couple of years. Then I went to, I started a PR division at an ad agency. And I was there for about a year and a half. And what I realized was I was promoting everything that got put on my desk, as opposed to being passionate about being able to pick and choose. And so I left there with the idea that I'm just going to freelance, and I'm going to pick and choose what I work on based on my own values. I just did a breakfast television segment this morning talking about exactly that. Like, one of my biggest learnings, or the advice that I would give to women and men out there, is be really clear on what your values are, because your values are going to actually act as your compass as you move on in your career. Because that's how I made all my choices and decisions over the last 20 years. So I went off on my own, started, what I thought was going to be, freelancing. And then the business started to flow in. My first client was Visa Canada, leveraging all of their film festival sponsorships across the country, because I did a lot of work for HBO when I was in New York. So I had that film experience. And then I did some work for CIBC, leveraging all of their sponsorship programs and their donations across Canada, and worked really closely with their CEO, John Hunkin, and their chief marketing officer, Stephen Graham, at the time. And they brought me and my company on board as their agency of record within the first 6 months. And wow. So I was able to hire staff at that point. And that's when the agency kind of, grew and started getting more and more clients. And I think that it goes back to be really clear on your values. I wanted to pick and choose who I worked with and what I worked on. And I probably said no, even in those early days, to business that didn't feel right, because it wasn't really aligned with where I wanted I wanted my reputation to be. And I think that's one of the most important lessons ever, because your only commodity is time. So if that's all you have, and in PR, really, that's what we sell as time, then how are you going to spend it, and who are you going to work with, and what are you going to work on? So pick and choose, right? And so when I look at our particular business 20 years later, we've worked in so many different industries and sectors. We've done tech, we do tech, we work in real estate, we work in the fashion space, we work in the lifestyle space, food and beverage space, because I pick and choose based on what I'm excited about and what the team gets excited about, as opposed to just sort of taking on everything that gets put on my desk. And that was a very early lesson for me.
It's a great thing to be able to do that as someone in business, because I know as you grow, there's certain pressure on you to maybe bend a little bit on the values. Well, do I take this on? I've just hired a bunch of staff. We're not that busy right now. Maybe I take this project on, so we got to pay the bills. And it's hard to stick to that philosophy. No, I want to do the right projects. I want to have the right clients, and I want to do it the right way. And I want to just take on everything to pay the bills. Because as an entrepreneur, you always get that. You get to certain points as you're growing to have those type of pressures on you. And it's tough to stay the course and say, no, we got to just do it this way. And, and turn down, a lot of people aren't comfortable turning down work.
Yeah, listen, I can't say that I haven't taken on work. There has been, the reason I'm saying it's a lesson is because when I veered away from those values and have taken on work where I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. I didn't even know why it didn't feel right. I was just like, it just doesn't. We usually have walked away from it 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later. So it's more like you have to just listen to that gut instinct. And then what happens, and I'm telling you, over the last 20 years, it has absolutely happened, is when you say no to something, the thing you should be saying yes to appears right away. It just does. And so like, but if I had said yes to a piece of business that I wasn't aligned with my values, we probably couldn't have taken on that other piece of business that is aligned, because like we wouldn't have the resources maybe to take that on. And so I think that being really clear about what's important to you, and we built a reputation based on, like, we're known for being very philanthropic. Well, that's because we work with brands and clients that do the same. So that's a really important part of our values, because I want to work with brands that actually care about the world, care about the environment. You know, we work with a client, Lightspeed, which is a POS system, one of the largest tech companies globally. And we helped them IPO in Toronto on the TSX, also on the New York Stock Exchange. And the founder, and we've worked with them for almost 6 years. And the founder, who's now the executive chairman, just committed $40 million to global conservation projects, like everywhere in the world. It's so impressive what he's doing. And he's brought us on board to also like do that storytelling and leverage that. And so that's how it rolls out, right? If you partner with companies that are doing great work and care about the world at large, there's all these spin-offs that allow you to work with people that are aligned with your vision of what you want to do.
It's easy to tell a great story when the
Yeah.
alignment is there, right? Like, I mean, it's, you know, you're having a great conversation, your values align, you know, everything matches up, and it's easy to be able to like freely and confidently put your weight behind them.
Listen, I have a philosophy: don't work with, like, I just don't want to work with people that aren't, you know, kind and loyal and don't give back in a meaningful way. And, you know, and I think that I just don't want to do it. I think there's lots of PR companies out there, and I think there's lots of, you know, business to go around. I just feel for us, you know, when I think about the growth of the agency, it's not going to come from just growing the agency. I don't think I ever had a vision to, you know, turn my 30-40 person shop into like a 200 person shop. That's not a goal for me. You know, I'm happy to stay the size that we are. What we do is when we have up and coming brands coming to us, and, you know, this is a good example, Flow Water. Nicholas Reichenbach, who's the founder of Flow, came to me 6 years ago with a concept, basically, which is I want to be able to put water into Tetra Pak. And he came with a jug of water, which is from his spring just outside of Toronto. He's like, try my water. I was like, this is awesome. And we had a lot of experience in the beverage space because we did PR for Fiji Water for 10 years, for over a decade. And I bought into it right away. I'm like, this is amazing. So we invested in Flow. And then we also have been doing their PR for the last 6 years, helped them IPO on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And, you know, it opened at $8. And so what I tend to do more and more now is look at some of those cool, young, up and coming brands, and how do we truly invest in them? So how do we take the experience that we have, help them build their brand up, and be part of that process? And that's where we experience a lot of our growth, which is not just in let's keep taking on more clients. I think let's pick and choose our clients, but let's make sure that we're investing in them in a meaningful way.
That's remarkable. And I mean, you have to be aligned on a very fundamental level to be able to achieve that, right?
You have to be aligned with yourself, right? Like I think the big thing, and I actually do this exercise frequently, is I write down, like, what are the values that are important to me right now? You know, prioritize them. I call it like this exercise of the 5 I ams. Like, I am this right now. And
How
sometimes
often do you do that, Natasha? Sorry, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I
Yeah.
want to peel back the layers so our viewers like really tap into some of these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I do it probably every year.
Okay.
Because, and some of those I ams never change. Like, I am philanthropic, that's just consistent, that's important to me. But, you know, some of them do change, you know, over the years. And so you have to sort of look at, well, what's important to me right now? And, you know, one of mine has always been, I am the director of my own life. And so being the director, it means you actually are the one that's making the decisions. So you are in control of your life. You're in the control of the story of your life. What do you want that to be? And so as I'm making decisions, you know, for the business or personally, I'm always thinking, well, this is my choice, what's happening right now. So I can choose whatever I want. And what would that be, as opposed to making it, you know, giving that power to somebody else.
You're also a leader of a business, like a thriving business with a bunch of people working for you as well. So part of you as an entrepreneur has to take that into consideration too, right? Like, so you have to balance what your goals are and what you are, and you're trying to drag people along, or you're hiring people that are like-minded, I assume, in any event. And you're saying, this is what we are, this is what we do, this is how we do it. If you fit in, great, help us make it better. But if not, you know, we're not going to put a round peg in a square hole type of thing.
For sure. Listen, recruitment for everybody right now is a huge issue. I've been lucky where a lot of our senior team has been with me for a long time. We have 2 VPs that have been with NKPR for 12 years and 13 years, and another VP for 8 years, an account director for 8 years. So a lot of our team has been with me for a long time, which I'm very fortunate to say. But as you're recruiting senior and junior team members, yeah, you want their values to be aligned with yours as well. That's super important. And we usually can tell within the first 3 or 4 months if they're going to be a fit or not. I always say this: I can teach someone a skill set. You know, I can teach them how to do PR for the most part. What I can't teach them is to be a kind person. I can't teach them to be a good human. I can't teach them to be nice to their colleagues and nice, you know, like, and just like the soft skill. I actually can't teach that. And so what I often look for, and what we look for when we hire, that soft skill is really important. Because when I, you know, again, I said this to Dina this morning on BT, I was saying, like, one of the most important tips I can give to young people as they're starting out in their career is be kind, because that is one of the most important things out there. A solid relationship that I have with a great friend of mine now, but he used to be a vice president over at Rogers, and we created a television show together for one of our clients probably about a decade ago. And he said one of the things that he always remembered about me is that when they made a mistake, and they made a big mistake on something, he had said, you didn't get mad at me, you didn't like freak out, you just said, let's come up with a solution, we'll figure it out. And to this day, we're friends, partially because I just am a big believer, there's a solution to everything, let's figure it out, without the dramatics. And so, you know, I think that when we're hiring people, we're looking for that soft skill. And you don't always know if they possess it, but that's really important for us.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, Natasha, because for personal reasons, because I really hope this is one episode that all of my staff and the lawyers working at my firm watch and listen to that, because I take the exact same approach. You know, stuff happens in law all the time, and mistakes happen. But I want and my partner shares the same philosophy. We really try hard not to play a blame game, and we say, okay, stuff happened.
Totally.
Let's figure out the solution, and let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Put procedures in place. But we're exactly that same type of philosophy is what is the type of environment that we're trying to instill. And I think we have succeeded that way, and we've sort of had to evolve into that to some extent over time. From like, okay, we got a problem, someone screwed up, or someone made a mistake, or the problem just happened. let's fix it first. Let's find the solution and not start yelling at each other and pointing fingers. And I've got everybody's back. And I thought, don't worry, we got insurance, or don't worry, we're going to fix it, or let's find the solution for the client first. And then we'll figure out what happened internally and fix our processes and our procedures and our checks and balances.
For sure.
And so
It's
I hope
alarming.
everybody tunes in and watches this. I'm not the only one that shares that philosophy.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think, you can't grow without a few bumps. It's how you learn. And so like, I never think of mistakes as mistakes. I just call them learnings. And it's those learnings that truly help you grow, and you need them, and they happen. And so, to your point and to what I was saying before, it's like, look at how do you move on from it, as opposed to getting stuck in it. And so, I think that's the key, right?
That's great advice. And I think the sooner you let go of the emotions, the clearer the solution becomes.
Yeah.
Right. And there's always a solution to every issue. You just have to work as a team and figure it out. And the quicker you put blame to rest, the quicker you're able to move forward and move away from it. And I think what you said is absolutely brilliant.
Well, it's reaction, right? You need to remember you can't react. Like, you actually need to, I'm sure you guys have been in a situation, I certainly have, where you receive an email from someone and you want to instantly respond. You're like, I'm going to respond, and then you're going to regret that response. So I'm a big believer, you just have to sit on it. I sometimes draft it and then I'll just sit on it and never send it, because sometimes you just need to release. But I think that you need, you can't react to things. You need to sort of take a step back and think about, okay, what do I want the outcome to be? How do I want, the information that I'm putting forward received? It's often not about what you're trying to say. It's more about how do you want yourself to be received or perceived. And so think of it from that perspective, as opposed to what you're pushing out.
Yeah. And you're also dealing with other people in the process. And I think that's really important. You have to figure out, okay, this is what I really want to accomplish at the end of the day. This is the results that I need, or I want to get to. But I'm dealing with David Gorski, and he's got a certain personality type. And I'm dealing with Natasha Koifman, and she's got a certain person. What buttons do I have to push to them? Because they're going to react totally differently. So I got to understand David. I got to understand Natasha, and I got to talk to them differently, or deal with them in a different way sometimes, to get the results that I really need. That's good for me and ultimately good for them too, right? So as a leader, you sort of you got to pay attention to that too.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to pay attention to that. I find that's what PR is all about, because if you think about, when we're pitching to a media person, it's not a blanket, and this is where a lot of PR companies make the mistake, is they're sending one pitch to every journalist. That's a mistake. You actually need to be thinking about, it's not about what we're trying to push out, it's more about what will the reader actually care about. And the readership is different in every publication. So it has to actually be a different pitch for every publication. And I think, yes, that takes more time, but you actually will generate the results that you want. And I think that's the mistake a lot of PR companies make, because they're just pushing information out, but that doesn't work.
They're pushing information, trying to see who bites into the story, not realizing that the readership and the story should be different in every single publication, right? I mean, the subliminal message might be the same, but it's how you deliver the story that really changes. And that's
and what journalists are like, every journalist is different. Like, what are they actually interested in? What I used to do in the early days was, and this was before email, or email was just starting to be a thing. And certainly you weren't emailing journalists, you were picking up the phone and you were calling them. But I would read the paper, and I would just, articles that I love to read, I would just send a note to the journalist, not pitching them at all, and just saying, I love the way you wrote this. And so it gave me an opportunity, in my early 20s, to really sort of understand, like, the writing style of some of the media. And so when I would pitch them, I would pitch them based on like their actual interests, versus just like, this is an entertainment reporter, and I'm sure that they'd be interested in my story, which, why would they be really? Like, they're pitched all the time. So
that's brilliant.
I mean, but it's so basic, right? Like, it's like, it's just in some ways common sense, but it's like so many people are skipping that step because we're moving so quickly these days. But you actually can't move that quickly. You have to actually go back to Like, what do people care about? Again, not what you're trying to push out, but how do you want them to receive the information?
So let me ask you this on the same topic. How do realtors take advantage of what you just said? Because I completely agree with you. We are moving like at warp speed, and people want instant success and instant gratification. And the realtor that started yesterday wants to be featured in the New York Star tomorrow. But I agree with you. Like, you have to take a step back. You have to break it down and care about what it is that the author of the article is trying to say in his style, and take it all back. So let's peel back some of those layers. What should realtors do?
Well, I think it goes back to authenticity, right? So, I talk about like someone's like your superpower a lot. Your superpower is different than my superpower and different than, David's superpower. So it's like, we need to be thinking about like, what is that for you? What is it that makes you unique? And then once we sort of understand what that is, then we need to make sure that you're actually demonstrating that on a day-to-day basis and demonstrating it. So for example, okay, I'm going to ask you, what do you think makes you unique? What's special about you?
You're putting me on the spot.
I am.
Well, I think I have a drive for excellence.
Mm-hmm.
I think I really apply myself in everything I do, and I really care about the success of other people.
And how do you demonstrate that?
How do I demonstrate it?
So,
well, I show up every day. When I come to work, I give it my all. I am very transparent and open with my realtors about what made me successful.
mhm.
I share ideas. I always try to give them an edge in everything I do. I mean, this podcast is a very example of that. David and I, have our companies have a 32-year history. And David Korman would always come into the brokerage and put on these amazing webinars. And I saw the benefit that it gave to my realtors. And I said to myself, you know what, how can the rest of the industry benefit more from that knowledge?
So I love that. So now you take all that and you think about like our social platforms that we have access to. It's exactly that you should be demonstrating on your social media channels all the time. So for example, you talk about sharing, and it sounds like, what you're doing here is it's about sharing this incredible information of the past 32 years that you've had the privilege to be able to have access to. Now you need to make sure that on a weekly basis, you're using your social channels to be able to share that on a regular basis. You talk about the importance of showing up. You're like, I show up every day, I give it my all. Then like really sort of be looking at how do you take that notion of showing up to inspire others to do exactly the same thing and integrate that into your like social channels so that your brand starts to become all of these special parts of you. And then if we look at translating that into like PR, like actual press coverage, what we would do is we would take this 32 years of knowledge that you guys have and the lessons that you have learned and go to a media person and say, here's what it was like 32 years ago. Here's what it's like today, but here's the common denominator that still stands that I want to make sure that our industry doesn't forget. And that might be the potential pitch. So like, that's how we roll.
That's pretty good. And right off the top of your head, and you've got a whole plan created already. And but I guess that's what experience teaches you. So you really dive into what's unique about any client of yours in whatever the industry is, because it doesn't really matter the industry. It could be real estate, it could be widgets, it could be it could be anything, right? From packaged water. It doesn't really matter what the product is. It's the story behind the product and the people that are pushing the product and how they're doing it. So you have to get a good understanding of that. You got to do your homework that way to come up with the game plan.
For
right?
sure.
I love what you said earlier, Natasha, that PR really gives power or gives life to the brand.
Yeah.
Right. Like to me, that just, I get it. Like that really resonates with me as a as a business owner, because we talk about branding a lot in real estate, but we don't talk about PR enough, right? And it's those powerful stories that you can tell that will get your brand to that next level.
Well, because people don't really understand what PR is, right? Like they think it's sort of, advertising, sort of marketing, sort of branding, like a combination of all those things. But really what it is it is bringing a product, a brand to life through, those authentic storytelling moments. And I think to your point, like, yes, this could be any water, but what makes this water actually interesting is the fact that it gets plastic, off the street. And so
it's the environmental packaging.
Exactly.
Environmentally safe packaging, right? The
exactly
water
it.
inside doesn't matter as much.
That's exactly it. Although it's, alkaline water, which is actually really good for you as well. But, you need to sort of, to your point, like look at what are the, when you look at a product, whatever it might be, what's the benefit? Why should people care? And then build the storytelling around that. But then the piece that's super important, and I had asked you this, is how is that being demonstrated? How are you activating that? And so I can get that story at once, but only once. So how do you ensure that you're actually activating on that particular, on that brand on an ongoing basis? And I think that's actually really important, because you have to make sure you're demonstrating your support of that on a regular basis.
I assume, Natasha, that your business has had to evolve a lot over the last 20 years too. Because 20 years ago, social media didn't exist the way it does today, but you're still doing branding and you're still doing PR, but you're doing it in completely different ways than you are today, right? Like you've really had to evolve with the times and be on the cutting edge and looking for the next thing.
Totally. I mean, we're the only PR company in Canada that is verified on Instagram and on Twitter, and that's that little blue check mark. For many years, I think the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star had said that we're the social media channel to follow. We were very early adopters of social. And where a lot of my competitors, I remember at the time, were like, this is just a phase, it's going to pass. And so they didn't get onto it early enough. And I've always felt like I've always been open to trying something new because you just don't know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you should try. And so that's what we did with social media in the early days. We're like, I remember when I started my Twitter account, I was lying in bed, sort of like, what's this Twitter thing? And I know Natasha Koifman was taken and NKPR was taken. So I'm like, I'll just combine the two. And so my handle stuck, which is at Natasha NKPR, and I just kept it. Because I was like, I just want to try. I want to play with it. I want to see it. I want to see how I can sort of utilize it or apply it to what we're doing. And I think that's also a really important lesson, whether you're in real estate or working in any industry, is you have to try. Like you look at the tools that are available to you, and you have to see how it might apply to how you work. And so what's interesting about, what's changed in the last 20 years, certainly, yes, social media is new. How we communicate with the media. Like I said, I used to be able to pick up the phone. Now you're texting, or now you're emailing them. It's just quite different. We have fewer outlets now than we did before. And so you have to take all of that into consideration. We do a lot more pay for play these days. So you're utilizing advertising more as opposed to just, PR and editorial. And so I think that we have way more tools in our toolbox than we ever did before. And so for me, PR is like far more exciting now than it probably was 20 years ago, which has, it's fun. At least I still think so.
What's next?
Another building? I don't know.
I did some research.
Is there going to be a Natasha 2? Second tower?
Maybe.
You got to stay in the same neighborhood. I think you can't just build one across the street in a different across the city in a different neighborhood unless you move your office too.
What I have to say, and not that this has been in discussion with anybody at all, but I would love to do. It's not, maybe it is a residence, but something in either Muskoka or in just outside of Toronto. I just feel like we have this beautiful sort of country, 2 hours, any way you sort of look, whether you go to the Niagara route, whether you go to the Muskoka route, whether you look at Georgian Bay, where, anywhere sort of an hour and a half around the city. But what we don't have is like any kind of luxury experience, whether it be like a hotel and residence, where you kind of feel like, you're not living in a $7 million cottage, but how do you have that same kind of experience where you feel that sense of community, but you're in a hotel residence? And I feel like no one's really done that.
There was one attempt a little bit in Muskoka at the Red Leaves project, the Marriott project up there. And it's got certain elements of that. I don't think they've taken to the level that you would probably take it to.
I think they did well with it, actually. But I think that there's an opportunity for more of that.
Yeah.
And so that would be, something that at some point I would love to be able to do.
Yeah, do it in Gravenhurst. That's where I hang out.
But there is lots of land within an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I mean, the opportunity is definitely ripe for the taking, and that's the great part of living in Canada. That those opportunities are there.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Let me ask you this question. A big pet peeve I have, Natasha, in the real estate industry is how realtors market, right? Because a lot of realtors, and I keep bringing this conversation back to reals, but a lot of realtors will put their face in the billboard and say, call me.
Or worse, actually, they'll put their face on a bench, like one of those
bus stop.
And I'm like, someone's like actually sitting on you. Anyway, sorry, that's a pet peeve for me. I never quite understood that.
But from a marketing point of view, like, there's such more creative ways of marketing in this industry, right? Like, why do realtors do that?
I think because they don't know any better. I think they do it because they see others do it. And they think, well, if someone's doing it, it must work. And so I think that's why they do it. I think what they don't realize is there's a real opportunity to be able to brand themselves, to be able to network. One of the panels that I did during Buzz was talking about style and branding and how the two are connected. And with shows like Selling Sunset, certainly women in real estate feel like that's what they should look like. And that's not the case, because that's not reality, and there's actual reality. And that's not what women look like, or what women should necessarily look like. So I do believe that where it should start is what we talked about, which is, what's your brand? What do you stand for? What do you want to be known for? And how do you sort of take all that and make sure that you are demonstrating that on a consistent basis? I think that with realtors, social media is underutilized. Social media properly is underutilized. I think there's an opportunity to probably demonstrate leadership a bit more in the industry, to lead as opposed to follow. And I think that I think the biggest thing is really kind of look at probably the majority of your businesses can come from referrals. So how can you make sure that your customer experience represents who you are and is unique, so that that customer will refer you to the next customer and will refer you to the next customer? It's no different than my business, where probably 70 or 80% of my business comes from referrals. We've worked with the same clients in different capacities for the past 20 years. So I think that's also something to consider, is your brand is important, but also how does your brand demonstrate itself or activate itself when it comes to the customer experience, so that that customer, turns into the next customer and the next customer after that. Whether instead of investing in putting a billboard up, actually invest in doing events potentially with your customers, do something special for them, make them feel like they're part of a community, give them some kind of, do a strategic partnership with a couple of businesses so that they feel a sense of value, that if they buy from you, then those businesses will be part of the benefit that they get in the future. Give them access to something that they might not normally have access to. So almost think outside of your, like outside of your picture going up, and think about what are you actually providing as a service that is unique and special. It kind of goes back to that quote that I said, people will remember, that Maya Angelou quote, which is, it's not about what you do, it's how you make people feel. Like I'm paraphrasing it, but it's how do you make people feel? And that's how they're going to remember you. And so think about the experiences that you can create for your customers that actually make them feel like they want to stay connected to you and refer business to you.
Well, it's a fabulous message. And, most of the people that listen to this and watch this, Natasha, are real estate agents. So I really hope we get a good audience tuning in to get this, because it's some important things for them to learn from you on all this. So it's really something. It's been a real treat to have you on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think
Thanks for having me.
I think the industry needs more PR, is what I think. I think we need more PR in the real estate industry, especially in the real estate realtor industry, in that vertical. Because I agree. I mean, it's an exciting business, and we need more leaders, right? We need more leaders. We need to utilize social media better. We need to be more connected with our customers. And I think focusing on customer experiences, as opposed to, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, which is what most realtors do. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And that's exactly it. It's the customer experience. So really think about that. And I feel like that sometimes gets pushed to the wayside, and that should be actually the most important thing. Who's your target audience and how are you going to connect with them? It's just, PR 101. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and realtors, just like lawyers, will throw us in the same thing. Like we start in a place where we have the worst PR, like we're the butt of jokes. Like, agents are in it just for the commission, and lawyers are in it just for the fees. So, we got to fight all that, just to get going, just to get the toe in the door, right?
Yeah, no, totally. My son's a lawyer, so it's and being a Jewish mother, I was like, you're going to be a lawyer. This is great. He's like, I'm a lawyer. People don't like us.
What type of law does he practice?
He does like civil litigation, like on behalf of insurance companies. So he works for
an ambulance chaser. He's in it just for
no, he's the opposite.
Just for the fees.
No, he's on the other side. He works at Super and Co. So he's on the insurance side.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, but that's the reputation that our industry has. We have to fight against that.
Yeah.
And then they got to get to know, look, no, you come to Kormans, that there's real people there. We really care about your business, and we care about you, and we care about your agents and all the rest of it. And David's got to fight that battle too, and teach his agents to do that. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I think that now that you're able to bring people back, though, COVID, I think probably was very challenging for a lot of businesses, because you're doing work on Zoom. You're not connected in the same way. And so I think that to really connect with your team, you do need to be face to face. And so just to be able to feel that energy. And so now that things are coming back, I think that will be important. I know a big focus for us is really around team building, and feeling that sense of spirit, that we've all kind of missed.
Yeah. So Natasha, I know we got to wind this up pretty soon, but can you imagine you started your day at breakfast television, and then the same day you get to be on David and David on real estate to finish your afternoon? Like, how about that in one day?
I know. I still have another meeting after this. Yeah.
I was assuming that. I was assuming this wasn't the last thing you were going to do today.
Yeah, listen, I feel very, very lucky. I think I have, what I do never feels like a job. And I think you can probably tell it's a part of, who I am. And I love the fact that I can help, companies, people, brands get to where they're supposed to be. And by doing that, ultimately, because our values are aligned, I feel like we're then contributing to the world in a positive way. And that's always been important to me. I always thought I want to leave the world a better place than I came into it. And so how am I going to do that? And so I feel like with NKPR and my firm, we're able to do that because yes, we have corporate clients, but we have corporate clients that are doing good as well. And so I think that making sure that I'm able to pick and choose in that way feels rewarding. And because we've worked in so many different types of industries, you're able to take all those learnings and truly make sure that you're, sharpening your knives all the time. So I think that's why coming up with campaigns and programs and being able to use those tools for multiple industries, I think is part of what gives us a bit of that edge.
Yeah, talk about knowing, like going through all the different industries and just being aligned and working with people that have your own vision, and it's great, and you can pull all those resources under one roof and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, like connecting this business owner with this business owner, knowing that they're all aligned and they all really work well together. And I did a little bit of research yesterday, and then you're involved in so many businesses, so many ventures, right? But they all align together on a very basic level.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, even when I think about the charity that I've been involved with now for 12 years, which is Artists for Peace and Justice, which I helped start, we've raised just over $33 million for the children of Haiti. We built the very first free high school in Port-au-Prince because there was no free education in Haiti, which I think is like just horrific. And not everyone has access to free education even before that. So it's one of those organizations where I feel like we've been able to accomplish so much, but I've been able to bring so many of our corporate clients and so many of our client partners to support it. We do an annual event during the Toronto Film Festival, and during COVID, we still did it. I hosted it in my backyard, and last year I think we raised $700,000. The year before, I think it was just over $500,000. Because I just felt like, they need, the children of Haiti need us more now than they ever did. And so we continued with that. And so I'm a big believer in that when you partner with like-minded individuals and like-minded companies, then you're able to do so much good. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if it weren't for like the amazing, clients, partners, friends that I feel this generous alignment with.
The one thing that comes to mind is the owner of Flowwater and how he gave, $40 million to support sustainable conservation around the world.
So that wasn't Flowwater, that was Lightspeed, the founder of Lightspeed, which is a tech company.
Up a little bit.
Yeah, but yes, yeah.
But I mean, this is a company that you've worked with for, 6 years, I believe you said, right? Yeah. And, a large part of that, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn here, but was probably the fact that, they rubbed elbows with you and they saw how you run your business and what advice you give to your clients. And, they adopted that approach as well, which is amazing, right?
I think it works both ways. I think inspiration, if your values are aligned, work both ways. And right. So, him doing that was super inspiring for me, which made me think, oh my God, I'm not doing enough when it comes to some of the work that we're doing in Haiti and an initiative that we started a few years ago called 26 Hours of Kindness, where I always felt that I know that philanthropy was important to me and important to the agency, but how do I encourage the younger generation to care about it in the same way that I do? So I started 26 Hours of Kindness because we have so many young people that work for us, where I wanted them to feel it's not always about giving money and writing a check. It's about, you can also volunteer with your time, and just for them to understand, there's so many ways that they could give back. So for 26 hours consecutively, we would choose different causes to give back to, and the team would participate, and the younger team members had an opportunity to choose what those initiatives and what those causes were. And I remember one of my team members, we were making sandwiches for the St. Felix Center, and he had said to me, he's like, thank you for this exposure, because I just didn't realize there was so much need, because why would they? And that's something that we're continuing on this year. We didn't do it for 2 years during COVID, and then this year we are relaunching it again. So I just think it's really important. How do you create a society where people care about more than themselves in a world where becomes more and more challenging?
Well, Natasha, I'm finding this incredibly inspirational because you're teaching another generation that yes, you can be entrepreneurial and successful, but you can also do a bunch of good for the rest of the world. It's not all about you. It's about you. Yes, you got to be happy, you got to succeed too, but it's also what can you do for your fellow man, and how can you make a difference? And you have a fabulous story because you found the formula, and you're doing it yourself, and you're passing that on. And as you're speaking that, I found it was, I don't have a better word to say it, and you'll understand it, I think, Natasha, but I became verklempt, for lack of a better term, just listening to you. And it's just a great message for everybody out there. Doesn't matter what the industry is, doesn't matter what the business is, you can make a difference. You can still be successful and make a difference to others and do things the right way and be a good, kind person. Like you can't get a better message out than that. Thank you.
And it doesn't always, necessitate writing checks. Like Natasha said, giving your time is equally as beneficial and, just as powerful as well.
I had a young woman that approached me about 3 years ago, no, probably more like 5 years ago now. And she had DM'd me and asked if I would be her mentor. She wrote this beautiful letter, and I said, absolutely. She was working in finance, but she loved to bake. And that's what brought her so much joy. But she was feeling sort of this not being fulfilled. And so we kind of worked through that. And I had introduced her to St. Felix Center, and now she bakes them a cake once a month. And she had sent me an email, it was a couple of months ago, and she had talked about how that was almost life-changing for her, because she feels that now when she bakes, she's baking with this incredible purpose, because she's baking for people that would normally, not have the opportunity to enjoy one of her cakes. And I think that's what the world needs, right? It's like we introduce each other to new things that give them an opportunity to do something kind for someone else, and you're just always paying it forward. And that should be the goal. But we're in a world right now where young people think that if they tweet or if they post an Instagram post, that's giving back. They're doing their part. And yes, that's great, but that's not enough, and that's not the same. And I'm not suggesting that my cause should be someone else's cause, but I do feel like go find what it is. Find that thing or a few things that just really inspire you and make you feel like you're getting outside of yourself and helping someone else, and you'll feel awesome. We all have days where we have great days, and we have days where we're not feeling so great. And I always think, and I do this, I write in a journal, I write in a gratitude journal, and I'm always writing what am I grateful for? And I'll tell you, you feel pretty great after, you've written all the things that you should be grateful for, and you're like, okay, I'm good. And I'm not saying it's that simple, but sometimes it can be.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. And listen, it's not, and a lot of people don't know my background from the standpoint, I was 18 when I had my son. I raised him pretty much on my own. And so, this isn't coming from someone that necessarily had a privileged background. I worked for everything that I have, but attitude is what actually makes you successful. And when we talk about those soft skills, it's the soft skills that lead to your success, not the skill set you learn. We all can learn that. You put 10,000 hours into something, you're going to be great at it. But the soft skill is very different.
I'm going to teach each and every single one of my realtor to be a good person first and foremost.
But you can't teach that. That's the thing. You actually can't teach that.
Sure.
No, you got to find the right realtors.
Yeah.
I got to find the right lawyers, the right law clerks, and min people. That's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Adding the right team members, the right pieces to your team,
Yeah,
right? And then help you push it to the next level.
that's it.
You
Yeah,
can't assume that you're as good as it gets. You have to assume somebody else has an idea too and can make you better too,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
right?
That's awesome. Natasha, listen, thank you
Great.
so much for your time. I was telling David before the podcast began, I'm really looking forward to this because, you know, I find that people from outside of the industry are not, you know, in that box. And, you know, it was just great to really tap into all your experiences and hear all the stories. And I'm sure we could have kept talking for another 10 hours because, you know, there's so much to talk through. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and being here with us and supporting the David and David on Real Estate podcast and supporting the real estate industry. It was great to have you a part of Buzz, and it was truly an honor to have you a part of our podcast as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. Great way to end the day.
Thanks so much.
Natasha.